G'day everyone and welcome to another edition of the Weekend Wrap brought to you by Crowcast, of course. A bit of a dodgy day for the Crows this weekend. Certainly not what we were hoping for, but kind of what we were expecting maybe. Anyway, joining us tonight to break it all down is everyone in Discord and my usual cohort, so let's not stuff around and get right into it. G'day, and welcome to the Weekend Wrap, Round 12 Weekend Wrap, covering the game versus Collingwood, of course. Welcome to everyone who's joined us on Discord and YouTube and Twitch, and welcome, of course, to my faithful sidekicks. Macca, how you going, Mac?
Oh, not too bad, mate. Disappointed with the result of the game, but overall, had a good weekend apart from that.
Indeed. And Nikki, how are you?
I'm here.
You're here? And that's about it.
I will try and battle through. Apologies for the voice.
That's fine.
I had my first COVID test ever, and I hope it's my last.
Oh, really? Yeah, that's not a good time.
It was not fun.
No, never mind. Look, thanks again, as I mentioned, to everyone who's joined us on Discord and YouTube, of course. If you want to get around the chat tonight, make sure you get in the studio and stick your hand up and say g'day, and we'd love to hear your opinions and comments and views and rants and everything else that I'm sure is going to come our way tonight. And, of course, if you're watching on YouTube and you don't know anything about Discord, go to our YouTube channel. There's a little video there on Discord. We're building a great community up to nearly 175 members now, guys, which is fantastic. Really good to see people getting around it. The game day chat is always fantastic. The chat during the week is always fantastic. Even the Formula One chat tonight will be fantastic. Nikki, if you stay up for that. I know you like a bit of Formula One.
I used to, not so much anymore.
PJ Crows asking if it's live. Yes, it certainly is, and all systems go, mate. So something wrong at your end. Yeah, whatever. Oh, now look, I'm not even going to let you have your go first, Mac, because we've already got a hand up in the studio, and I'm not going to discourage that for a moment. So Ads, and for people who don't know, Ads is one of the proprietors of the wonderful strawberry farm down at Mount Compass, who have been supporters of the Crowcast for as long as I can remember. Ads, you're good to go there, mate. I've given you an invite, so just hit the button. Here he is. Adam, how you going? Unmute yourself, bro. While Adam works out how to unmute himself, I'll keep going. But yeah, Adam is the proprietor of the strawberry farm down at Mount Compass. Fantastic supporters of the Crowcast for a very long time, since Adam was a boy. Very bad pun. Adam, you got yourself muted, mate. I don't know, you might have to scroll down your screen. I don't know what you're actually coming to us on, but certainly we'd like to hear what you've got to say, so I'll just keep you there, and if you work out your microphone, then sing out and we'll have a chat. But in the meantime, Nika and Mackie.
Yeah, we're going well, mate.
I'd just like to say that this is the end of my second nice little pepper jack Shiraz, and that might have been a consequence of that. So, Nikki and Macca, what do you think?
I'll let you go first, Nikki.
I only watched our game. I didn't watch any of the others.
No. We're just a quick one about us before we get into Macca's 15 minutes of fame.
I was I've missed very few home games since I've actually lived in Adelaide. I was kind of actually happy that I was not physically there for this one. I think that's probably all I can say about it.
Mac, what'd you think?
Look, when you consider how many things we did wrong, how many players didn't play well, blatant, glaring errors that cost us goals. When you look at all those things, we should have actually won by a mountain rather than losing it by, one kick. If you think of, also, I do have to be a little bit critical of coaching as well with some of the placements on Elliott, for example. It was a. I'm not allowed to say fuck up, so I won't say it.
No,
but it really was.
We are in a concerted effort not to swear on this podcast anymore. So just clean it up, old man.
Yeah, that's why I won't do it, mate. It really was, wasn't it? It was just a great big mess. And how many times would you get Tex Walker missing the shots that he missed? Even Frampton. Not Frampton, what am I talking about? Fogarty. Even Fogarty. I mean, we actually handed them the game on a platter. I don't think that Collingwood won the game. I think we lost the game.
Oh, we certainly handed it to them. Now, yeah. Adam, I'll push it back to the audience because your microphone wasn't working, but if you get that sorted, stick up your hand and we'll have you back on. And certainly, if anyone else in the live audience there, we've got 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 and 11. Oh, Pete just dipped out. But we've got 10 there, so if any of you want to have something to say, or anyone else that's in the live studio chat at the moment, get around us. My personal view, Mac, was that it was just one of those games. The intensity wasn't there at the outset. The ball didn't bounce our way, and as soon as the intensity drops, and the few comments I heard around the trap saying that the warm-up was pretty lacking in intensity. As soon as you don't bring the intensity, it's very hard to scrape your way back into it, and we were found wanting in the end. Anyway, let's not preempt that discussion too much, because of course we have Macca's 15 minutes of bloody fame. Mac, how you going?
Right, very good. Lead me into it, mate.
All right, let me just put your title screen up there. Macca's beloved weekend results wrap up. Don't blame me, you asked for it. Oh dear!
I love the title. A worthy title, mate.
All right. First cab off the rank, we had Melbourne finding Brisbane out a little bit, I reckon. Melbourne 14-13-97 to Brisbane 11-9-75, a margin there in the end of 22 points. Pretty convincing, and my point of view is that just showed up a couple of Brisbane's frailties.
Well, it really was a game of two halves, Fiend. In the first half, Brisbane looked by far the better side, and they led by about 20 points at half time.
Yep.
And in the end, Melbourne have won by 22, so that's a 7-goal turnaround. So obviously dominated the second half totally.
Yep.
Brisbane. I think you're right. I don't think Brisbane are quite up to the really top sides. They did it very nicely for a half, but then in the second half, when Gawn, Petrarca, Oliver really poured it on with Cozzy. I love Cozzy down up forward. I mean, geez, you'd love to have a player like that.
Yes, sure.
When those guys really poured it on, just shows what a quality side Melbourne were and why they are top of the ladder at the moment. And they were just too good. And as you said, I think they showed that the Lions are just going to be that little bit short.
Nick, do you see it?
Nope.
Nope. Right. My impression, Macca, was that it showed Brisbane up as just lacking a little bit of real strength in the midfield. They've got some really good midfield players, obviously, with Zorko, etc., in the midfield. But Melbourne's midfield is big as strong, and I felt like they overpowered Brisbane's midfield in the second half. And it might be a little bit of an Achilles heel for Brisbane. And because Brisbane was struggling out of clearance, they ended up doing something quite similar to what we do, in that their forward 50 entries became quite shallow, they became disorganised, and whereas in the first half they just looked dominant up forward with plenty of options, those options dried up because the forward 50 entries, the quality of those entries just dropped off. So Yeah, Brisbane just showed, I think, that you can, if you can get on top of them physically in the midfield, then they might struggle.
Agreed, totally.
All right, so the next game was Sydney 13-14-92, getting up over St Kilda 12-11-83, a margin there of 9 points. I'm not ashamed to say that there was at no stage, at any stage during this game, that I actually wanted to watch it.
It's a reasonable comment because it wasn't a high standard. It was a very hardly fought game, though, Fiend.
Yeah, good.
And there was nothing in it all day. St Kilda were up for the fight this time, but they did miss some gimme goals. I mean, really gimme goals, which cost them dearly. I forgot to mention that an ex-Crow got 28 disposals, greatest number for the Lions in the first game that we talked about.
Jared,
Brad Crouch, ex-Crow, 38 disposals in this game.
Yeah.
Actually had a very good game, Crouchy. Look, it was a game that went back and forth, and St Kilda actually for once didn't give in. They normally do, but they didn't. Higgins had a gimme shot, 30 metres out from a set shot.
Yeah.
He kicked 1 goal 5 before that, and he ended up with 1 goal 6, which is a shocking result. And to be honest, he just shat himself, didn't he? I mean, he really didn't have the mental courage to kick the ball properly, and he missed. That's why he missed the shot.
Yeah, that's 100% right. Drink up.
Yep. And I will later. But basically, it'll be very costly for St Kilda this season. And look, they're not really good enough anyhow, but they like to believe they are, and it will cost them very dearly.
Indeed. Now, the next game was Essendon v Tigers, and the Tigers just slipping into beast mode, I feel. 19-9, 123 to Essendon, 12-12, 84. A lazy 39-point win to the Tigers, but I just feel like they're starting to tick along, Mako.
Well, dream time at the G in Perth. So
it was amazing to get that crowd. It was brilliant to get that crowd. It really well done to the Western Australians to turn out like that.
It's an amazing crowd, 55,000 thing, and none of their home teams playing. So, but they got their money's worth of the game because it was a good quality game of football. Just as you spoke about the St Kilda game versus Sydney not being a very high standard game, this was a good quality game because Essendon played some good football, and Richmond likewise, and it was going. Essendon, I suppose Richmond always looked like winning, except for a drive by Essendon in the last quarter, and they actually hit the front. And you thought, hello, could they? Could they? And then Richmond said, no, you won't. No. And then they got 7 goals on the trot with some very, very good football and dominant football. And look, overall, it was a very enjoyable game to watch. I thought that Parrish was outstanding with his 44 touches. And you have to think what John Worsfold has done and, buggering Ben Rutten up by insisting that Parrish be a half-forward flanker rather than a midfielder, which he should have been all along. And it just goes to show sometimes you can have these senior coaches that can actually ruin a young coach rather than help them. Parrish and Merritt are great for the Essendon in the midfield, but Richmond's quality overall. And when you consider they didn't have their full forward, they didn't have their main ruckman, they're a little bit scary, Richmond.
Yeah, they seem like they're just playing the game on their terms at the moment, Richmond. They're getting into that mode where they always, even, as you say, even when Essendon came back at them, it was never really in doubt, to be honest with you. I didn't think so anyway. And they're looking pretty powerful. And it's an interesting comment you made about Parrish, because there are examples across the league of players being pigeonholed and their careers being affected. JL, as you mentioned, Brisbane playing him in the midfield now where he belongs, and he's racking up touches. Over here, he was a medical sub and sort of in and out of the team. So Parrish is similar, wasting away there on a flank when he should have been in the midfield, and Rutten rightly putting him back in. So you're right, Mac. A coach's opinion can have such a massive impact on a player's career.
Correct.
All right, we had the Eagles getting up easily over Carlton in the end, 22 points, 14-11-95 to 10-13-73. I heard a comment made by one of the media scribes about, at least Carlton aren't getting thumped anymore, and rightly so. Someone on Big Footy came back with, so the result of 12-year rebuild is that they're not getting thumped anymore, they're just getting beaten by honourable margins. That's about it, isn't it?
Yes, but even then you have to. Firstly, I'd want to make a point that West Coast hadn't won at the SCG since 1999. Then again, they haven't played Carlton before at the SCG.
Yeah.
So it sort of ruins the stat a little bit, doesn't it?
It does a little.
Coming back to your comment, it's a very valid comment. In fact, it's a little bit worse than it really looks on paper, because that was a very weakened West Coast side that went across there, and to the point that Carlton were actually quite a short price favourite, which I found financially to my benefit because I backed West Coast.
Well, you don't normally back West Coast away, but it was an away game for both teams, so it was always going to be an interesting result, wasn't it?
Yes, and because I don't rate Carlton at all. Don't rate them at all. And in fact, if you go through their lineup, Fiend, which I did just before we came on air, I reckon half their side wouldn't get in any other AFL team, and I think that's fair enough. Yep, and as I think whoever made that comment is quite right, that this is the result of about 12 years of rebuilding. I don't know where they go to from here, because they were very, very ordinary indeed. Very ordinary. I mean, in fairness, they lost McKay in the first quarter with concussion, but West Coast lost Shepherd, and they were already, as I said, a weakened team. But no, Carlton never looked like winning, and I think they've only got really one classy, apart from McKay, who was out injured, player on the field, and including Cripps. I don't count him as a classy player. Walsh is definitely a classy player.
Yeah, you don't rate Cripps?
You have a look. It's been a long time since Cripps has played a match-winning game, Fiend, and he's spoken about in hushed terms with me. He's a player I avoid in Dream Team because he just doesn't score what he should score, and he never lives up to his reputation, in my opinion.
When do you reckon the last time was that he played 100% fit?
That's probably a valid point, but you have to rate them if they go out on the oval. They have to be rated as being fit.
For sure. I just think that Carlton have done a massive disservice to Patrick Cripps. I do rate him as a footballer, but I think they've just run him into the ground.
And I'm in the same boat with Fiend. You looked at what they did with Cruiser, and I think they've done exactly the same thing with Cripps, is they've just absolutely wrecked them by persisting and playing them with long-term injuries that should have been rested and fixed.
Yeah. Agree, Nick?
Well, I agree, Nicky.
That's why they're a shit team. And at the moment, I've got the half-time score up for the Dockers Bulldogs. The Bulldogs at half-time, 6-8-44. The Dockers 4-4-28. So they're up there by 16 points at the moment. We'll keep an eye on that as we go through.
Only 4 now, Fiend. I can see the screen in the background with no sound. And it's only 4 points of difference now.
Yep. So, interesting round. Obviously, we had a few buys this week, so the ladder is a little bit wonky. But it does show that at present, Melbourne on top again with 44 points. Bulldogs could get to 40 at the moment. They're on 36 points. You'd expect them to win, I think. So chalk them in for 40. Geelong on 32 along with Brisbane. That's your top 4. Port with a game in hand also on 32. Sydney after 12 matches on 32. Then we have West Coast and Richmond in the 8 on 28 points. And 2 games clear now, Mac. 2 games clear. Obviously, GWS has a game in hand, and Fremantle could pull off an upset. But at the moment, 8th place is 2 games clear. So almost, you'd imagine if after the 3 rounds of buys, if that remains the case, that's pretty much done and dusted. Essendon, Giants, Fremantle, St Kilda on 20 points. Gold Coast on 16 along with Carlton and us. Collingwood on 12 points. Hawthorn on 8 points. And North Melbourne on 4 points with some games to play. So Very interesting.
Yeah, and look, I think you're right, Fiend. I don't think there's going to be massive movements in the 8. There can only be possibly one movement in the 8 anyhow, because only one team can possibly get in there, and that's for everything go right for them, and everything go wrong for one of the teams that down near the bottom of the 8. I think it's pretty well set.
Yep. J&M saying Fiend with a question mark. Sorry, I didn't. If you said something beforehand, I didn't see it, so you might need to put that comment up again. Yeah, so look, an interesting round. No real surprises, I guess, but things looking pretty solid. Why don't we just not even carry on anymore? Why don't we just go straight into the Crows match, shall we?
Yep.
Because it was a bit of a dog's breakfast. The Crows 10 goals 13, 73 to the Pies 12 goals 6, 78. A margin there of 5 points, which ironically is how many points Tex kicked. +1.
Yes.
Initial thoughts, Nikki?
Well, they were probably right about what they were saying about the warm-up lacking the intensity. And I know in the game day chat, we're all pretty much in that first quarter we all thought looked like the players thought they were going to romp this in. So they just did not seem to try at all. They rightfully seemed to get a bit of a rocket at quarter time and pulled the finger out. And the second quarter was much better. We still couldn't kick straight. But we were looking a lot better, and it was a lot of the younger guys as well, which is what I like to see. There was a little bit in that third quarter, and we still had some nice passages of play in the last quarter. But it really did come down to their cream rising to the crop and us making some really stupid decisions. When we had players free of the ball, like forward, we'd pass backwards or we'd run backwards. And it's like, but there was a player there and we could have gone forward. Okay, yeah, whatever. And it resulted in turnovers. So as Ned had said on YouTube, yep, bad kicking is bad football. And it was an annoying, horrible game to watch, but there were still some little instances of we saw some step forwards from some younger players, which I think we're all pretty much know that that's what we're going to have to put up with this year.
That's what we have to focus on. Macca, what do you think?
Well, Nikki made a very salient point there about the turnovers. Elliott got 5 goals from turnovers alone.
Yeah.
One player. And our decision making was very, very poor. Our execution at times was very, very poor. Don't get me wrong, there has to be some good passages, otherwise we wouldn't have scored. But I think we had too many players that were well down on their form, and which put a lot of load on the others, and they didn't bear it too well. And I can't name names yet because we're not allowed to.
That's right.
But
stuck to the format. Yes. Only took 6 years, Mac.
And I for next week.
I nearly had blurted out some names in too. But I do think though I have to put the coaches in line for criticism as well. I mean, having O'Connor in the centre at crucial stages when he was not having a good game, I thought that was just absolute madness. Absolute madness.
Disagree. Disagree, Macca. Disagree.
All right. Tell me why.
Go on.
No, it's just why you disagree with that point.
Well, because no one complained when we had young kids in the last set of bounce against Geelong and we won that game. I don't have any problem at all with Ryan O'Connor being exposed at the pointy end when the pressure was on. He was unfortunate. He got caught. Bad luck. But I don't have any problem with them being in there in the cold face when the heat's on. None at all.
Well, my comment was on the basis that he hadn't had a good game up to that particular
doesn't
point.
Matter. Doesn't matter.
Okay.
He's on the ground. He'd only had 58% time on ground for the whole match anyway. He's in there to be an inside midfielder. I know he hadn't had a great game, although I think his game his bad game has been overstated by many. But I don't have any problem. You can't have your cake and eat it too, Macca. And I think if you're running a rebuild scenario, then you've got to allow these kids to take responsibility. And we did it against Geelong, and it was fine in that last centre bounce. I remember highlighting it at the time, and I don't have any problem with Ryan O'Connor being in the middle at the end.
Okay. And the other thing too was the matchups on Elliot. And again, not saying any names, I wasn't happy with the matchups on Elliot.
Well, who would you have had on Elliot?
Well, that really is the problem with the side that we've chosen, and the fact that the players that you would logically put back there, they weren't go well themselves. It was a bit of a problem. So,
I'll extend the question. Who in the Adelaide team or squad, including the SANFL, would you have had on Elliot instead of Andrew McPherson?
Well, I would have certainly have tried Hamill for a
You're
start.
You're kidding, aren't you?
Oh, hell no.
You're kidding, aren't you? The guy's a twig. Elliot would have towed him up. The guy's a twig. Elliot's a hard unit. No way.
But he's quick. He's quick.
No way. Anyway, any other great suggestions?
Well, I don't think I dare say anything there.
Oh, come on, mate. Hard enough.
I'll name a player
who
would have played on him. Luke Brown.
Yeah, no, he'd been available. But I don't know. Look, maybe we didn't have the player, but as it turned out, the players that we did have on him didn't work out.
No, I think you're doing him a disservice, McPherson. And you said it yourself. You said it yourself. 5 of Elliott's 6 goals came from turnovers. Now, you know as well as I do that when the ball gets turned over, everyone's out of position. The forward line is open, and when you've got a one-on-one situation with a bloke like Elliott, the defender is on a hiding to nothing. Now, I'm not saying that McPherson had a great game by any stretch, but I don't think Elliott getting 6 goals was on McPherson. I think it was on our stuff-ups in the middle, on transition, and it had an effect not only on McPherson but on other defenders as well. So, yes, McPherson didn't have a good game. It wasn't as bad, in my opinion, as what everyone is saying, simply because he got set up to fail by a shit midfield. Well,
and I can't argue against that, Flint, but I did also, when Kelly was moved on to him, he did slow him down somewhat.
Yeah, but I mean, you got Kelly on De Goey, and he did a good job on De Goey and like robbing Peter to pay Paul, really, aren't you?
Well, you are, because actually Kelly was one of the defenders that had a very good game. So
I've just thrown up the selected sides. Of course, we had 2 ins. Now, conspiracy theory time. Is it just a coincidence that Luke Brown was out injured after being caught without a mask on the flight home? That just a coincidence, was it?
Well, what would be the point, Flint?
I don't know.
He wasn't the only player, so if he was going to be,
it was him. He didn't have his. From what I can gather, he didn't have his mask on, and Tex had his mask lowered. I think that's how it was. I just find it interesting that we heard nothing about a Luke Brown injury all week, and then all of a sudden he's out injured. And I know he's been carrying that Achilles, and he's been a bit touch and go at times. But the last 2 weeks he's looked quite free in his movement. I just found it a little.
He's actually had. Well, his last 2 weeks have been excellent, actually.
Exactly. So I just found it a little bit odd, and I could be just jumping at shadows here. I found it a little bit odd that Lukey Brown all of a sudden is out injured. Of course, we had Berry out injured as well, and I think we missed a lot of Sam Berry's good groundwork in the forward line. McPherson and O'Connor in. I didn't think we matched up too badly. I still wish we could find a way to get young Worrell in the team, but I actually Peter and I had a conversation on Tuesday night, and I actually put forward a case for Worrell being in the side as a swingman, being able to play forward and back at the expense of Shane McAdam. It wasn't Shane McAdam's worst game by any stretch, but he's still. I think we could have used the opportunity to see what Josh has got, but sadly no. So I mean, I think we went in predictably, and I thought it was the right choice to leave Murray out, given their forward line structure. But Geordie Butts did really well on my check. Kept him pretty much out of the game. So kudos to him.
When's he going to get a rising star nom? Seriously.
Well, it's a very good point, Nikki. A very good point. I don't think Jordan Butts has been beaten, maybe once, but not destroyed by any stretch. And he's held some very good players. And I'm with you. I'm very much with you, Nick. He deserves a rising star nom. And if he was a midfielder, he would have already got one.
Well, yeah, I think he's played that well to the point that even if Tarley was available, I wouldn't be playing Tarley at full back. I'd be leaving Butts there. Because that's Butts' future position to own.
And it's interesting that you actually.
I'm not saying I wouldn't pick Tarley. I'd still have him in the side, but Butts would be the man.
J-Max said they're still waiting for more body of work from Butts.
Yeah.
It's been interesting the past couple of weeks in that whenever he's gone on to whoever their tall forward is, that I've noticed that the opposition are then moving that tall forward up onto like the half forward line.
Good observation.
They're actually taking Butts away from the full back line.
Yeah.
But the thing is, the kid's still so bloody good. He's beating them out there too.
Yeah. He's not fazed by being dragged up the ground. Some fullbacks don't like it. But Geordie's quite mobile for a big fella, and he's not bad skills-wise, and he's not fazed at all up the ground. You're right.
He's got a really nice field kick on him,
yep.
And he also makes quick decisions.
Yep, agree. So, look, on paper, I think a selection was okay. I don't think there was any issues with it whatsoever. It was more about the performance on the day, really, unfortunately. But I truly think, as a broad comment, that, Mac, you'd know this, and Nick, you've played footy too, you know this. If you don't come with intensity, then when you get put under the pump and you have to dig in and actually try to get yourself back in the game, there's a difference between the effort that you put in versus the effort that you put in if you're switched on from the start. And let me explain what I mean. When there's effort without a mental switch on, which is what I attribute lack of intensity to, you miss a lot of little things, like there'll just be one bloke that misses a tackle, or there'll be one bloke that doesn't run to position, or there'll be one bloke that doesn't offer a lead, or there'll just be that missed handball because the guy didn't time his run pass right, or something. Just those little things that are very intangible, very hard to spot. But when you come to the match switched on and ready to go, I feel like you're more inclined to do the right things. But when you don't come switched on, even though your effort levels might lift, you're still not switched on to the game. So it's all hard work. It's working harder, not smarter. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yeah. I also think if you come to the game really switched on, the ball tends to run for you. Everything seems to go right for you. And if you come there, you think we're going to win this easy. You're not really revved up. As you're trying to work your way back into the game, it just doesn't go easy. You don't seem to get the bounce the ball. You don't seem to get the umpire's decision. You're standing on one side, they tap it to the other bloody side. It just doesn't quite work out. And so you're quite right. If you don't come out 100% fired up, it's really hard to get it going.
I don't think it's so much about being fired up, Mac. I think that's not quite what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is if you're not mentally ready, then it's the little things that slip, even though your effort levels might increase. So, for example, how many times did we see 2 or 3 Crows players jump for a mark? Now normally you'd have a situation where one's up, one's crumbing, etc., etc. How many times did we see blokes having to stop in the middle of transition because they didn't have an option? That's because someone just hasn't been switched on enough to go, oh yeah, I need to run that diagonal. They're the sorts of things that I think go missing when you don't rock up to the ground in a switched on fashion. So obviously Nick's put a rocket up them at quarter time, and rightly so, and their effort levels certainly did increase. But it was a lot of wasted effort, in my opinion. It wasn't. They didn't stick to their structures. We got sucked into Collingwood style of bustling game the whole time. We didn't settle down and play to our strengths. Our defenders got pushed up, got sucked up the ground so many times. They got sucked up the ground and they were out of position on transition. And it was those little things that I think are the things that are affected when you're not mentally switched on before the game.
Yeah, well, as I say, the game's played 90% between the ears, and if that's not right, well, then the rest of it doesn't come out right. I think we could make some changes though this week, and I'm not allowed to mention players yet, Dean, but
No.
I think we've got a couple I think need a rest.
Oh, definitely, definitely.
But the other thing as well on that point, Fiend, is that you can have. So if you come out with effort, as you said, it's only one or two. But when you're trying to get back in the game, every player has to lift their effort.
Yeah.
You can't have a couple of passengers, and we still saw that a little bit. And that's what was going on. And that does take more out of you, and it takes more of a team gelling, which was good to actually see that second quarter, because that effort did rise. And it fairly well maintained for the rest of the game overall. But, and as PJ Crowe said, was our midfield often throw our defence under the bus. And that's the problem at the moment, is we've still got to really work on that midfield, because, yes, those guys did lift, but they didn't lift early enough.
Yeah. And the trouble is when you are forced to lift your effort levels to get back into a match, it can be a little bit panicky. It's very difficult for a team when they're 4 or 5 goals behind and they're asked to raise their effort levels. It's very hard for them to do that in a way that maintains the game plan and the game style. It's more about, I've just got to get the ball. I've got to get the ball, and so it becomes a bit of a mess, and we often were sucked in to the ball and into marking contests as well, because everyone's trying to do their bit. They're trying to lift their effort, and they're not thinking about what they need to do. And so again, it comes back to that saying of working harder instead of smarter. And I felt like after quarter time we certainly worked harder, but it wasn't working harder to implement the game plan that I'm sure that they would have rocked up to the ground thinking they were going to implement. And that's what made it so difficult, and that's what kept, along with the bad score, shots a goal, that's what kept Collingwood in the game, in my opinion.
Yeah, I wouldn't get over the number of times, Fiend, what you're saying is right. Like, we were like magnets running to the ball, and they'd have a player or two hanging out, and this has been a problem with our club since time immemorial. And they, I remember one of the goals they got there where nobody at the back at all in the back lines.
Yeah.
So, and all our players up like running towards the magnet, they're drawn towards the magnet.
They all got sucked up a number of times, Macca.
It made me weep watching that, and that really was. I think it does illustrate your point. Lots of effort, but not smart effort.
Yep. The biggest indicator for me with regards to intensity is the amount of slip tackles. We're always a step behind. We're always chasing, and that's when you start slipping tackles. When you're chasing tail, and we're never in good defensive position. We're never in good positions around stoppages, in my opinion. We just look like a bit of a mess. So anyway, I won't harp on about that point, but that was my main observation, obviously, apart from the fact that on top of that, you get Tex kicking 2 goals 1,000 and Fogarty, missing a few as well. So anyway, let's have a look at some head-to-head stats, shall we? So disposals, we had 357 disposals to Collingwood's 334. 202 kicks, 155 handballs. Collingwood 225 kicks, 109 handballs. Collingwood certainly showed a propensity to kick, and so did we for a little while, but then it tailed off a bit to our usual mix. inside 50s, and this is where the crux of the matter is, 50 to 44, and that was closer than it was for large portions of the match as well. Our disposal efficiency was acceptable, 72.3, but that belies the fact that our turnovers, when we did turn the ball over, were diabolical and always on transition on that first kick. So we were all, and this is my point about McPherson, Mac. Because we turned the ball over on our first kick out of defence in transition, everyone's running forward of the play, the defenders are pushing up, and all of a sudden the ball gets turned around and we're nowhere. That was what I observed on more than one occasion.
Well, that is a valid point because there were some horrible errors made. I mean, I remember one that Smith made there. That lightning stabbing pass went straight onto their chest. I can't believe it.
I don't even know who was trying to kick it to. Anyway, our efficiency inside 50, so 50% to Collingwood's 45. Free kicks in our favour. I thought the umpiring was reasonable without being fantastic. Riley O'Brien certainly won the hit-outs, but not to any great advantage, in my opinion. We won the clearances, but again, not to any great advantage, in my opinion. And I saw, again, a lot of kicking over shoulders and handballing to stationary players. So whilst we may have got clearances out of centre and out of stoppage, again, I just didn't feel like we got any value whatsoever from our clearance work.
Well, again, it's unarguable, isn't it? As you said, I've got visions of Laird in the centre so many times under pressure, just hooking the ball forward over his shoulder. I mean, that you can't possibly be trying to find a player with that. And but to his credit, at least he was going in and getting it and under great pressure. But that's because the ball wasn't being delivered properly by the ruckman anyhow.
Yeah. Possession stats, 142 contested possessions to 122 in our favour. Uncontested possessions, 211 to 206 in our favour. You're seeing a theme here. Turnovers, surprisingly, 61 to 65, also in our favour. Marks, and this is where Collingwood's use of ball by foot comes into play. 115 marks, Collingwood, 75 to us. Marks inside 50, 15 apiece. Contested marks, 15 to 16. Defensively, and here's a good stat: 52 tackles to 76, which again is what I'm talking about with regards to intensity. Macca and Nicky, I reckon we attempted a hell of a lot more than 52 tackles on the night, but we didn't stick that many. So I mean, those head-to-head stats show that we're in the game for long periods and probably controlled the contest for long periods. But as we saw, we couldn't convert. And, when you come out with a lack of intensity and then you start missing shots, either as a consequence or just coincidentally, it makes for a very, very difficult night. And, Tex only had to kick a couple more. Fogarty only had to kick a couple more. They both missed gettable shots. And we would have won by 2 or 3 and probably wouldn't be complaining.
Yeah, and again, the chat, Dev makes a really good point that we're seeing a trend against the weak teams. We're not switched on as much as we are against the better teams. And I think that's very valid because when we played the top teams, we played very good football. And against the lesser teams, we certainly don't seem to be as desperate as we are against the good sides.
Yeah.
And
Go on, Nick.
I was just going to say the other thing about your point that we seem to control the play quite a bit, and we did, and we had some really nice passages to play, but it just came back to that lack of composure, the fact that when they got in our face a little bit, we just didn't work our way out of it smartly, and that's what you highlighted with Lairdy doing that kick over the shoulder, where you actually saw Collingwood when they got the ball out the back half of the centre bounce or whatever, it wasn't a quick kick from their midfield, it was out to the wing, or it was a player from their back line coming up to provide that help and that assistance, and we weren't getting that.
Yep.
I do have a problem with our wings in that they always seem to get in too close to the midfielders, particularly on set of bounces. And this is something that's been going on for a number of years. And I think with the players that we've got on those wings, although one of them in particular definitely needs a rest right now, I think they need to keep their width a little bit better to assist, because often that's what happens is if they then get the ball, it goes to their player, and they're too close in. I think that's kind of where it came out. So we just need to be smarter.
Yeah, and that comes from thinking, doesn't it? And when you're in panic mode, trying to save a game that you came to the ground thinking you were going to win, and all of a sudden it's not going your way, and the ball bounces the wrong way a couple of times, you get a couple of decisions against you, all of a sudden you're in panic mode, and that's when these tactical errors start coming into play. All right. Go on, Mac.
I agree with you, Fleet, and I think probably time that we went on so we can actually say names.
Oh, you've been champing at the bit, mate. I'm sorry. Just before we get into names, just don't forget, for those in Discord, if you do have a comment or something you'd like to share, or an insight that you think that we're missing, don't forget you can just put your hand up there and come onto the chat. We'd be happy to have you on board to listen to what you've got to say. Also, if you are on Discord after the game, after the cast, maybe don't forget the suggestion box if you've got any suggestions about what we can do for the cast. And of course, if you want to support the Crowcast in any way, Nikki and Macca, you can just go to patreon.com/AFL Crowcast, or hit the PayPal button on aflcrowcast.com. All right, Macca. Here we go. Players. Who do you want to talk about first? I'll give you the lead. Who do you want to talk about first?
Shoal.
Seriously, Shoal. So we're going to go bad first, are we?
I just want to. It's a situation of, and it's up for discussion. When a player who's been a good player, and he's been a real good find for us, but when they go bad, and they really do. I mean, I was very critical of his game last week, really critical, and he barely got the ball and he didn't do much. What I didn't like about his game this week was the fact that not only did he not go well again, I thought there were times he didn't go in hard enough with the ball as well. And I thought that's not what... in other words, I think he's lost a lot of his confidence at the moment, Fiend. He's certainly not the player that he was early in the season, and not the player that he was last year. So do you keep playing that player and maybe you keep running him into worse form? Or do you drop him and try and get him to get some form back in the sandful and bring him back in? And that's my question to you, because on the paper, if you were going to pick players on form, he would be dropped. So the question is, do you drop him, or do you say to him, we're going to keep playing you and hope you find form? And is that fair to the other players?
Just a quick one. PJ saying on the chat that Nate Fyfe looks like he's broken his arm in the Fremantle Bulldogs game, so we might pick that up at the end of this. Nikki, what's your thoughts on that, on Lockie Shoal and what Macca said?
To me, he looks too tired. And a couple of weeks ago at the ground, he looked absolutely buggered in the first quarter, and he couldn't chase his player. And we're all looking at ourselves going, well, what's he been picked for? He's just too tired, and it's just got to him a bit too much. I think they're also, so on that alone, I think he needs to be rested, because that's what he looks like. On the other point though, Macca, if that tiredness wasn't an issue, but he's in a bit of a form slump, because I think it's the two things happening, because they're putting more emphasis on him. The opponents are actually working out what he likes to do and stopping him doing that. Yep. Now, for him to be a really good long-term AFL player, he needs to work around that. And the only way you can do that is to keep playing him at that level where they're doing that at him. As long as you know that he's still coming to the ground with the right mindset, that he understands that this is a learning method for him, that he has to do that, and it's not detrimental to his long-term development. And we're not close enough to actually know that whether he can actually cope with that mentally or not. Only the coaches do. But for my mind at the moment, he just looks too tired. And I think he just needs that little bit of a rest, a little bit of a freshen up, and then put him back in.
Yeah, and Nicky, you're right. And you raise a very valid point there again. The fact is, he looks like it's too much of an effort to even run at the moment. And whereas he used to be a real good runner.
Yeah,
runner.
And that's really unusual for him. Because I'm a massive G for this kid. Absolute massive G.
I love him as a player, but he's just not playing it.
Yeah. And I think it's a compound of the two things. And so one of them, I don't mind the fact that he's still playing, because he has to work his way through that being tagged or being worked out and to work around it.
He's not being tagged, Nick.
No, not so much tagged.
It's not.
But the way they're playing him, they're pushing him out, and he's too slight. He's got to be smarter about it. That's what I want to see him working on that side.
But it's not. He's not getting any more attention.
But I think it's mostly the tired.
He's not getting any more attention from the opposition. There's two factors in my opinion. First of all, he's a kid, and he's a slight kid, and I think he's probably sore. And the second thing that shits me off the most out of anything is that he's been played out of position to accommodate David McKay, and that really shits me off. David McKay should not be shunting. We've seen it before, where our team gets shunted around to accommodate David McKay off a half-back flank, and it really pisses me off. They pushed McKay up to the wing this week, and Lockie Scholl was playing forward half the time, and I just didn't like it. But I do think Lockie's been looking a little bit sore and a little bit tired for a couple of weeks. I think the plan with him is probably to get him to the bye, because quite frankly, we don't have another player ready to go on the wing. The only way we could probably do it would be to push McKay up and bring Worrell in and have a bit of a more oversized defence. But I think they'll take him to the bye. But I agree with you. Seven kicks, 7 handballs, pardon me, 138 metres gained is not enough from you, wingman. Oh, I've got the hiccups all of a sudden. 11 uncontested possessions. He had 2 intercepts, 2 tackles, 3 ground ball gets. This bloody setup, but anyway. What else have we got here? Only 1 stoppage clearance, 2 marks, 2 tackles, 77% time on ground, so he certainly didn't get a rest.
He's twice the player that he's playing at the moment.
I don't have any problem with Lockie, but I do think at the moment we're not seeing the best of him, and I think a lot of that is down to tiredness.
Yeah, fair comment.
Before we go down to the next one, we've got 1990 Crow here looking to come on. So away you go, 1990. Come in, and what do you got to say for yourself, mate?
G'day, Phoenix, Macca, and Nicky. How you going?
Welcome, mate. Always good to hear from you.
Always good.
Thought I'd call in whilst you're starting to talk about players, in particular Scholl. You sort of mentioned that he should be dropped. I wouldn't agree. I think just keep playing him. We've got a bye coming up in this two weeks from now. He clearly needs a bit of a rest because he must be carrying a bit of a niggle. But I think the reality is he's a slight player that doesn't have the leg strength to run the capacity that he has all season. He's doing 17 kilometres a game, and in a body like his, it's just not sustainable over a whole season. I think another 2 years' time, it definitely will be. I'm not concerned with him in the slightest.
No, certainly not the long term. No, I'm only talking very short term at the moment.
Yeah, so on that point, though, I think I'd like to give him 2 weeks rest. So I think you'd rest him before the bye. Because just from what I've seen, and you talked about him being that slight, and we want to get him to the end of the season, and to really, and you're right that in a way, particularly for younger players, and I think we raised it last week, that you get the fitness best at playing the game, but he's just looking too tired at the moment, and I think he probably actually needs 2 weeks rest, not one.
Actually, a good point, Nicky. I'd do that because then bring him back fresh after that, and we may see Lockie Scholl right back at his best again.
You could be right. We do want him to play for the full length of the season to come, not have to have another break in 5 or 6 weeks' time. So it might be the best way, but there's a whole heap of players sitting in our team currently that probably don't deserve to be either. So it's a bit like it's catch-22 where you drop a kid to help him develop, but there's not a heck of a lot in the SANFL either.
99, if you were the guy, you've got the sole picking rights to the team next week, what changes would you make?
Oh, I posted this on Big Footy. I'm trying to remember what I did. I think David McKay, Phoenix, mentioned that he's actively forcing Lockie Scholl to be played further up the ground in a halfback flanker. But you saw, I mentioned this in my review online that I saw Will Hamill have a touch late in the third or fourth quarter, and I sort of just looked at my notes and thought, I forgot he was playing.
Exactly. I remember
I forgot where Hamill was playing. I was like a bit shocked. I thought, oh, he's okay. And I think David McKay is actually hurting Will Hamill's development as well, because a lot of the time the guys sort of do a dinky handball to David McKay that would normally go to someone like Will Hamill, and we need to be getting the ball into his hands to develop him more. And it's happened time and time again that this guy, David, no offense to him, I'm sure he's a lovely bloke. It's not his fault that he's getting picked. But coach after coach has made this mistake that they try and shuffle the team around to get this guy on the team that, seems to have great training for him, but has never been a top line player.
Well, I think that's good quality stuff. I can't disagree. So what changes would you make then?
Sorry, I just thought I'd mention that, it was the Will Hamill, David McKay and Lockie Scholl interaction. So the David McKay, I put him out. I'd give Luke Pedler a run, not in
he's not ready.
Position.
Not ready.
Oh,
he's not. He's nowhere near ready.
But
where would you play him? 1990.
Or you would have to play 55% game time up forward.
No.
Well, we've got Berry coming. We've got Berry coming back next week.
Well, Luke Brown definitely comes in for McPherson. So as long as he's fit, which I assume he would be. It was just more of a precaution this week.
Yeah, Pedler isn't ready. There's not many actually ready, and this is half the problem. There's not a lot ready in the twos. A lot of people keep crying about Newchurch. Newchurch would get cleaned up, kicked off the park. It would not do the kid any good whatsoever. We are stuck with Jimmy Rowe as our small forward, at least until Lockie Murphy comes back, which doesn't look to be any time soon. Tariq Newchurch is not ready. Lukey Pedler needs another 3 weeks at least before he should be considered.
You might be optimistic on my part.
Yeah,
I want to see a good talented player get in.
Oh, for sure. But you don't want to get him in and burn him because he can't run out a game. Jackson Haitley is probably one that can come back in and get a bit of a run of games. I wouldn't mind seeing Lockie have a break for Jackson, or even D-Mac for Jackson. I think Haitley's been a little bit hard done by, but I also think they're trying to play him out of position as well. So, but the stocks are fairly thin, mate.
I really like Fisher Mackessy's game on the weekend. Just the little things like his clean touch and. No, I did. From what I saw, I thought he was much better than what I've seen for most of the SANFL season that I've seen. I think he's definitely building.
Well, that's encouraging to hear that. But he probably won't.
I didn't see it, but there again.
No, I watched, and he's just his positioning, his skills when the ball hit the ground, clean pickups. played his didn't stuff any kicks that he would normally do. I just think he's slowly building. It's not going to be 2021's not his season, but I think he's still worth giving a shot.
Is Worrell ready for a game or not?
He's been ready for 2 months.
He's regressed for the last month. He's gone down, but again, that's probably a lot to do with the way the club's handled him. They should have been giving him a game when his form was up.
How do you measure the fact that he's been regressed? I haven't seen him make too many mistakes. I just think the team's been playing like shit.
His quantity of the ball that he was getting in the first, I don't know, was it 8 weeks? He was getting 15, 20 touches. He's gone back to sort of 8 to 10.
Is that because we're playing like shit and getting destroyed?
Nah, I feel like he's probably not getting to as many contests as he was. The side's been pretty rubbish most of the year, so not much has really changed in that respect.
Yeah, the quality of the opposition over the last couple of weeks has been pretty good. I'm still happy with the way Josh is going. I'm happy with the way Ball Ace is tracking as well. I think he's doing okay.
Yeah.
He's still a little bit of a way off, but I think he's tracking nicely.
He's an interesting one, Ball Ace. He's a well built player already. I don't think he's got the skills to be a forward at AFL level. And if he's going to make it, it probably has to be as a third tall defender. And the trouble is we've already got a heap of them.
Well, you send Tommy into the midfield. There you go.
No, I definitely wouldn't be doing that. Tom today. Have you seen him kick a footy recently?
I've seen him get a lot of it.
Rory Laird gets a heck of a lot too, and I'm not sure I'd want to be having him disposing of the ball too much in the midfield either. I think we've got a lot of players already that are the most highly skilled. We need to be adding these silky skilled midfielders to complement the ones we've already got.
Yeah, I mean the bottom line, and we won't get bogged down in this too much longer, but the bottom line is there's not a heck of a lot to choose from in the twos at the moment.
True.
And that influences selection to some degree, I think. But I think everyone should realise by now that we're still 2 drafts away. In the meantime, you take the good with the bad.
That's it. When I read the final siren, I wasn't disappointed. I think we've got to use this season for what it is. It's another rebuilding season, and it's good to be competitive most weeks, which I think we've been more than last year. But I still don't want to win too much either, because I want us to get a top 2 or 3 pick that results in a first class midfielder.
Absolutely.
To add to our stocks. So.
Very good.
Yeah,
thanks, mate.
That's definitely what we need.
Thanks, mate. Appreciate your thoughts as always. 1990 Crow, a very good, staunch supporter of the Crowcast, and we appreciate him coming on. And if anyone else has anything to say, please feel free to add to the discussion. We value everyone's opinion because, Nikki, sometimes we're not right.
Yeah, sometimes.
Mac has dropped out, and he'll be back when he can work out,
So can I pick the next player?
You can.
Schoenberg.
Harry, what were your thoughts on Harry?
I thought he took another nice step forward again. There was some really good things that he did in creating that space, and what I've liked over the last couple of weeks is that we've seen him actually being effective in the 3rd and 4th quarters, which means he's building that fitness up and he's staying engaged in games longer. So that's kind of what I liked out of the game. Was he was one of those youngsters to me that took a bit of a step up, that tried to take the game by the scruff of the neck and will it forward. And whilst he takes it by the scruff, he's got a nice bit of class around him.
Yeah. Disposal efficiency was a worry. Fluffed a couple of kicks, one pass to Riley where he just didn't lift the ball, and another couple as well. But 13 kicks, 6 handballs, went at 57.9%.
He wasn't the only one.
Oh, no, that's right. And look, I can cop that from a young kid. The thing I like about Harry is he gets in amongst it and he's not afraid to try stuff. He's not just going to rack up 20 possessions doing the chip kick. he's actually trying to make play. So 392 metres gained was excellent from Harry. He had 6 contested possessions, 14 uncontested possessions, 4 ground ball gets. Where are we here? 3 stoppage clearances. I don't even know what that is. 1 tackle inside 50. So, I mean, I liked Harry's game too. A few people bagging him because of the turnovers and the messy disposal at times. But like I said, I'm happy for him to be amongst it. Come on, Macca, get your shit together. I'm happy for him to be amongst it.
He's having a dip. And that's what you want to see. You want to see, and that's why we've really liked Berry as well, and McHenry as well. I think you can add into that, in that they're not afraid to try stuff. They're not afraid to be proactive. And if it doesn't happen, oh well, we'll go and try and fix it, and we'll do it again.
Yep.
They don't go back into their shell.
I still think, look at Harry when he's put a bit of muscle on, got rid of that puppy fat, and got another year's worth of pre-season, because all he needs is a tank and a little bit of strength through the core, and he's going to be a ripper. Macca, are you back?
I am, and you're talking about Schoenfeld. Look, Harry.
Schoenfeld used to be on Channel 9ers.
Well, same bloke. No, actually not.
Thank God it's
not. He actually, I thought he was very good at getting the ball yesterday. Did not use it all that well, but that'll come in time. I think he's got a very big future ahead of him, and he's a smooth mover. Get rid of a little bit of that puppy fat, and just give him just an extra little bit of time. And I think his disposal will improve, and I think he'll be a top player for us for many, many a year.
Agreed.
He's good.
He reminds me a little bit of Petrarca.
Oh, Macca, you're feeding back badly there.
It shouldn't be.
You turned up far too high.
All right, I'll turn down.
A little bit like Petrarca. He hasn't got that explosiveness of Petrarca, Nick. But in terms of his creativity.
That smooth movement, the strength that I can see will come.
Yeah.
And I think just a smart play.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a big comparison though, because Petrarca's top of the tree. So
yeah. So I said like.
Right. Okay.
Yeah, and it's taken Christian Petrarca a few years to get to that level too. So, and look at him now. It's probably, I would rate him top 2, top 3 midfielders in the comp. So,
absolutely.
Yeah. The bloke I'd like to talk about is Rory Sloane. 13 and 10, went at just under 70% disposal efficiency, 389 metres gained, 9 contested possessions, 14 uncontested possessions, 4 intercepts, 6 turnovers, 5 ground ball gets. Before I have my piece on Rory, Matt, what do you think?
Yeah, Rory was one of the guilty parties that kept bombing the bloody ball in long all the time rather than lowering his eyes and trying to do a pass. And he's been doing that quite a bit in the last few weeks. Rory, if you had to rate Rory compared to Rory at his peak, I reckon he's only about a 7 out of 10 at the moment at best, because he will fight for the ball when it's in his vicinity, but his usage of the ball is nowhere near what it used to be, in my opinion.
Nick?
He was one of the main culprits in that first quarter. I felt that he very much was missing. In the second half, he picked up his slack, but it still wasn't enough. And I think Macca's right, and we've talked about it for the past 2 weeks, that when we've had those better deliveries into our forward line, the one midfielder glaringly who hasn't been doing those smarter kicks in has been Sloane.
Yeah.
And that's a disappointing from our captain.
Macca, I don't know what you got going on in the background there, but something's going on. My thoughts on Rory is that...
Got a cough.
There's a mute button. Mute button. My thoughts on Rory is that his time in the midfield is done. He tried very, very hard to get us over the line in that last quarter, and I will never, ever, ever doubt his passion for the club or his work rate or his willingness to put his body on the line. But But I just don't think he's a midfielder anymore. I don't think he's a midfielder anymore. I watched him in centre stoppage work and around the ground stoppage work. He's not proactive anymore. He's just intent on taking body. I think that those couple of years of him getting tagged after Paddy left have gone into his head, and now every time he's just searching for body. He's not explosive enough anymore with those foot problems that he's had and all the rest of it. I think he's still a valuable player for us, but I think we need to recognise that he's no longer a midfielder.
So where would you play him then, Fiend?
Either half back or half forward. I think he'd be good either way. He's good overhead. As I said, he'll always put his body on the line. He's got tons of experience. I probably would play him in defence, but I could see quite a role, particularly if McAdam continues to stink it up. I could actually see a role for Sloaney out forward, and they might want to actually start, instead of rotating Berry and Schoenberg, they might actually want to start rotating Harry and Sloan a bit, I reckon. I'd like to see Sloan spend 2/3 of his time out of the midfield.
Well, he's certainly not the valuable midfielder that he used to be. There's no question about that. And as I say, what I don't like is the fact is when he does get it, I reckon more than 50% of the time, he's the one that's guilty of the big bomb into the forward lines, which, sets it up very easily for the defence.
He's not, like, I don't want him out of the team because I think he's got a lot to give. Right, yeah. And I remember back in the day when him and Paddy were running around, one of Rory's strengths was getting on the outside and doing those big long runs down on the fat side of the ground and kicking those big bombs in from the 50-metre line, and also being a link-up player out of defence, often being the bloke that would take that mark from the clearing kick out of defence. Now we don't see him doing that very much, either of those things anymore, and I think it's because the nature of how he's being asked to play doesn't allow him to, and I whether we play him on a wing or whether we play him off half back, he's got a lot to give this team, in my opinion, but I don't think he belongs in the midfield as a first rotation mid. Certainly he can have a stint or two, but I think we need to look beyond Rory Sloane in the midfield.
And when he was having those injury problems, I think last year or the year before, when we were playing him up forward, he's such a great, you're right, Fiend, he's such a great mark that he caused a lot of problems.
Yep.
When we went that smaller up forward. So I really like the idea of playing him there or off, as you said, off the half back line, because what we then do is around the ground is we pull up over those half backs or the half forwards to be even more around those stoppages that occur in the middle of the ground.
Yep.
So he can get involved in that way. But you're right, his job at the moment seems to be more blocking for our other mids. And that's what I've noticed being at the ground.
Mm. But I don't know whether that's his job or just the way he's playing, Nick.
Yeah. Well, I was inferring that was his job because he kept bloody doing it. And every other point you made is right. He's vital to our team. We need him in there. But I don't like when we see that our starting mid-rotation is Sloan, Laird and Keys. It's too slow, unfortunately.
And there's no distributors in that group.
No. And we need Lairdy in there because he gets the ball. We need Keys in there because he can get the ball, but he's also does a bit more on the outside. And as much as Sloan at his peak would be picked ahead of Keys, he's not at his peak anymore.
No.
And Keys is more important to us in the midfield than what Sloan is.
In that particular role.
And we're talking about, what we need to do to free up like our wings and everything else. So if we're saying that McKay to put him out, then you put Sloan at half back.
Yep.
Because he might not be that quick, but he's bloody smart.
Yep. And the other thing about Sloaney too, he brings other players into the game, and I think if you free him up a little bit and give him a quarterback role across half back, not dissimilar to Tommy Duday, and allow him to bring blokes like Scholl and Hamill and these kids into the game and get them running, I think he could be a lot of value for the next couple of years in that sort of a role, or as we spoke about, as a foil out forward, because he plays tall. He's deceptively good overhead, and a couple of goals a game from Sloaney wouldn't be a bad thing. I think we're killing him, to be honest with you. I think we're doing to him what Carlton have done to Patrick Cripps, to be honest with you, Mac. And I know we're a bit light on in midfield rotations, but I think we need to, and this is where when Harry gets a bit more wheels and Berry gets a little bit more match fitness and can spend longer in those rotations, Sloaney needs to come out.
Yeah, I'd really like to see him playing off the half-back flank. Essendon did do that with Heppel. He was not, he was always a midfielder, and he wasn't quite at the quality that he should have been. And they moved into the back lines. He's doing a very good job on a half-back flank for them. And in other words, you're still getting value out of a player that just can't quite do it where he used to always do it. And I think it'll be a lot easier for Sloan playing on the half-back flank, running straight at the ball, than playing in the forward line. And also, it also put a little bit of grunt back there as well.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the thing that I'm looking at here, and I know we're dwelling a little bit, but I don't feel like going through all the players, but I think midfield was such a glaring issue that we should probably spend time this week talking about it. If you have a look at the good midfields going around at the moment, let's take Melbourne's midfield, for example, and then you compare them to the current midfield stocks that we've got. We've got Laird, Keys, Sloan as your mainstays, and then you've got Schoenberg with cameos, you've got Seedsman with cameos, you've got Berry with cameos, occasionally a Ned McHenry, and a bit of Ronan O'Connor this week. Does anyone see that midfield rotation developing into Melbourne's midfield? Does anyone see it?
Not a chance.
I don't see it. I can see Berry and Schoenberg being mainstays in the future. I think they've both shown. Berry is so clean, and he's an absolute bull. Harry's, in my view, going to be a bit of a jet, and is very clean and creative. But outside of those two, I don't see any other midfielder in our current rotation being part of a midfield that develops into something like a Richmond midfield or a Melbourne midfield or a Western Bulldogs midfield. And that's a worry. I mean, we've got blokes in the twos coming through. We've got Pedler, for example. But we are still a way off building a midfield that is going to be good enough to challenge for a flag, in my view.
But it's got to be done at this coming draft. We've really got to get another 2 quality midfielders at the coming draft, and not ones that are handy ones, good ones that can really make a big difference.
Yeah, Billy Four Eyes talks about Miller in the chat. Look, I'm not 100% sold on Miller as a bona fide midfielder. I think he is great off halfback or a wing. Is he part of a premiership centre rotation midfield? I'm not sure yet, and we're yet to see how he comes back.
I don't think so.
Could be. I'd rather have him in the team than out of the team, but is he part of that gilt-edged midfield? I'm not so sure. And Mac, we have to try and do it at next year's draft, but at the end of the day, we'll get it done when we get it done. And given our draft stocks this year, unless we're willing to trade out our 2021 first, we're not going to have a lot of room after around, pick 4 or 5. We're not going to have any other top first round picks, so you're not going to get it. You're not looking. It's not looking too hopeful.
No, we've probably got the chance of getting one quality one, and
yes.
And if we had the drafting astuteness to possibly pick one that could develop into a very good player, and that's probably the best I can say about it. It's a little bit like the Poulter situation. I mean, we overlooked Poulter, and it may well be that we are right, but that's yet to be proven.
We went for Pedler instead of Poulter, basically.
Yeah, and I'll say this: Poulter's going to be a very, very good player for a very long time. And now, I'm not saying Pedler won't be, but we can't make the comparison yet. But gee, I tell you what, though, I would have loved to have had him as well.
Yeah, well, he certainly was on my list. Having watched him play in the SANFL, certainly on my list. Look, I think, obviously, we've talked on the Tuesday Night Live about Matty Roberts quite a bit, and he may or may not be within our reach, depending on how the chips fall. I don't think it's possible, but I would be throwing North Melbourne this year and next year's first round picks to try and get their first pick, to try and get Jason Horn. Because as much as I think Matthew Roberts is a great player, and Peter will hate me for saying this, I don't think he's silk. I don't think he's X Factor silk. I think he's bona fide, gilt-edged, Sam Walsh style midfielder, but I don't think that's what we're going to need. If you understand what I mean, we need someone
we need
brilliant.
Absolute silk.
Yeah, that's a good word for it, Nick. We need some silk.
Yeah, and the other option, and we probably should have done this prior, and we probably won't because we're a very conservative club that enjoys our long-term, long-suffering players. But we've got 936 half-back flankers at the moment. Surely there's an opportunity to do some trading. Surely there's some opportunity. I'd be prepared to put Brodie Smith on. I've been prepared for 3 years to put Brodie Smith on the trade table. I'd do it again.
You might get a second rounder for him, but that's about it.
Yeah, something to bundle up with another second rounder to maybe get us into the first round, Mac.
Fair enough.
Look, I'm talking about being aggressive, and there's blokes in there that you'd hate. I mean, Brodie Smith's been a fantastic club man, but Brodie Smith falls down under pressure, and we talked about it over and over again when we were going well through 2016. That period. It was blokes like Brodie Smith that broke down under pressure. It was blokes like Paul Seedsman that broke down under pressure. Yes, they are playing excellent football at the moment. Particularly Seed, another 700 metres gained. Smithers, 773 metres gained. It's fantastic. But we're not getting a hell of a lot of value out of that. I mean, we've talked about the good seed, bad seed. We've talked about Smithers missing a lot of targets and turning the ball over. There'll be teams around that would love a Brodie Smith coming off halfback. Gold Coast Suns, for example, would love a bloke like Brodie Smith coming off halfback for the next 3 years. Or a Paul Seedsman coming off halfback for the next 3 years. We have to be prepared to make these deals because at the moment we are at risk of squandering some really good South Australian talent on the table by just not having the currency to be able to pick them up.
Yeah, it is interesting. PJ in the chat quite rightly says we aren't a club that does that. I think Port Adelaide have showed us that sometimes it's very good to do that. That you actually can trade somebody that is a good player, but maybe even seen as more valuable by another club, which gets you something in which in return you can actually get a better player which suits you better to your club. So I think we are very conservative in that area, Fleen, and I don't think we'd ever do it. But I look at Port Adelaide and what they've done in the last, say, 4 years, and they've been outstanding in what they've done.
Well, what Port did was recognise where they were. Port were very sound in their judgment of their list a couple of years back. And that year that they did that deal with Freo to get up and get Rosie, they knew what they were doing. Getting rid of Chad Wingard, they knew what they were doing. And they have set their list up now. I mean, they're contending this year, but they've set their list up for the next 5 to 10 years with those lads that have been brought in. We have had opportunities to do so with various drafts over the last 2 to 3 years, and we haven't pulled the trigger. The only players that we've wanted to trade are the players that we don't want, rather than the players that we kind of do want, but would rather make the most of their value on the trade table. And that's the difference, I think. If we had Chad Wingard on our list, there's no way in a pink fit would trade him. I think that's what I'm saying.
I agree with you. And
we're too scared. And Surface has just said it as well. We're too scared of what a subset of the fan base would say, because they're lovely boys.
Yeah.
And we can't get rid of our lovely boys. But we have to be ruthless.
If we want to be a genuine powerhouse in South Australia, we have to be ruthless. And, Port are in a far more precarious position in terms of their member base. Not only do their members turn on them very quickly, but they also don't have as many of them. And yet they were willing to pull the trigger and do what they needed to do for their list. Now we need to be able to do the same. We've got a new regime in place, new bums on seats. We need to be clear-minded about where our list is and what we need to do. There's no doubt that Elliot Himmelberg and Billy Frampton should be nowhere near our list next year. Nowhere near our list, right? So Elliot Himmelberg, I think, has got some currency. Billy Frampton probably not so much, but I think Elliot Himmelberg has some currency. I think there's opportunities for some other players to be put on that list as well, and I just think we need to do it, because if we don't do it, our midfield is always going to be workmanlike, and we're always going to make semi-finals and be outdone by bona fide quality class midfielders.
Yeah, well, there's no argument for me, Finn, because I started that conversation that direction. No, I just think we've always been weak in that direction. We've always left it, with quality players, we've always left it till they've broken down and finished before we're prepared to move them on. Yep. And we've never ever said, well, yeah, the perception out there is that player is a good player. Let's go out there and get some good value for them, where we think that they're going to gradually fade over the time. And you have a look like Polak, for example. Polak with Port. He was playing very good football with them, but they could see that he wasn't the type that's going to get them a flag. Yep. They got very, very good value for him, top value for him, and over the top value for him. He's done bugger all for North Melbourne. So, it was a great move again. So I think that maybe we're not right at that stage yet, but if you don't ever start it, it'll never happen.
Yep. And I know NT Rabbit is a notorious Crouch disliker, but I 100% agree with what he's just put on chat. We have spent so much time putting all our eggs in the Crouch Brothers basket that we have burnt a lot of players as a result. Players that could have been good, that ended up being off our list. And I don't think it's just the apricot slices that we're worried about upsetting. I think it's also the player group. I think the club is actually afraid of its own player group, because they build this culture of teamsmanship and all the rest of it. And I think the club is too worried that if they ditch someone like Brodie Smith, for example, that the players are going to be all up in arms. Well, I can tell you that they're professional footballers, and they will continue to play professional football, and they will keep in touch with their mates, just the same as Charlie Cameron still keeps in touch with half of the Adelaide squad. This is a ruthless business, and if these blokes want to play in a premiership, they have to be prepared for the club to make hard decisions, in my opinion.
I'm 100% in the same vein as you've been in that particular aspect, because we've just been in the same old thing year after year, and hoping that we'll get rich at the draft and pick the genius player, which we don't. The speculative late second, early third rounder, that's going to be a champion. Yeah. And admittedly, we've had a couple. I mean, Harry Schomburg springs to mind, but they're the exceptions. They're not the rules. If you want a gilt-edged midfielder, you need a top 5 pick. That's it. That is absolutely it. So that's just coming back to the game itself, there were a couple of players that really did please me, and I've got to say that, you know, a guy I bagged all year last year, McHenry, I really loved his game again.
I thought he had an almost game, Mac.
Well, in terms of effort, the guy he sets a high standard, in my opinion now. He really does in terms of effort. I think of the small foot, I know what you're saying, it wasn't the grades of his game, but I did love his effort, and he just kept trying and trying to get us into the game. And so I thought he was a positive. I thought Thilthorpe, while he didn't have a dominant game, he just showed us those little glimpses that says, yeah, I'm going to be bloody good. And
just back on Ned, Mac. I feel like Ned's game actually epitomised what I was talking about, in that he lifted his effort rate, but it wasn't effective. Like, he had 14 disposals, 3 kicks, 11 handballs, only gained 92 metres. You know, was it 9 contested possessions? You know, you can't for one moment doubt his endeavour and his willingness to put his body in. But I think in previous weeks we've seen Ned be quite constructive and set up play. And I think what we saw was actually Ned regressing a little bit to just that bullocking, you know, terrier dog kind of style of play, simply because it was effort based, but it wasn't centred around game plan. I actually think that his game summed up how we played collectively as a group.
Fair comment. That's fair comment, actually. But I never ever thought he was going to ever make a footballer last year. Never. But at least he's looking like a footballer.
Yep, agree. We've got some holes. I'm not going to have a crack at Ronan O'Connor because I think, you know, the kid needs a run. He's been on our list for a few years. He just needs a bit of a run. He was a bit unlucky with that tackle that resulted in that last goal. The tackle from Collingwood was excellent, and he just got his arm pinned, and that was the end of it. Thilthorpe, Mac, I want to see him take a couple of marks. At the moment, he's going well at ground level. I want to see him take a couple of marks. I think he had a very difficult opponent this week, but I want to see him take a couple of grabs.
Look, with Thilthorpe, it's only a matter of time, mate. He will.
Oh yeah, I know. But it would be good for him, I think, for him to just get up in a pack and take a couple of marks.
What is he played? A half a dozen games, something like that?
I'm not bagging him, mate.
No, I understand that, but I just think that the glimpses he showed us, as somebody says, they were silky. There is that little bit of extra about him, and whether it's this week, next week, down the track a bit, there'll be one game he'll explode, and we'll see it all in the one game, and then we'll
no doubt.
Actually. But you know, I watched McDonald playing for Sydney, and I watched Thilthorpe playing for us, and by God, did the Crows get it right? You know, you and I, we were great McDonald fans,
yeah.
And thank God we're not the selectors, because Thilthorpe's going to be an exceptional player.
Well, he's got more versatility, I think, than Logan. Logan is an out-and-out forward, marking forward, a leading marking forward. Riley, I think, has got a few more strings to his bow, so yes, absolutely. Look, of the rest, I thought Darcy continued to show signs, and his intensity levels were quite good, actually, for periods of the game. Geordie Butts, as Nick mentioned, needs a rising star nom soon. He's just
very good.
Rocks up every week, doesn't he, Nick?
I mean,
oh yeah.
He was playing on a player called Mychek, who is a good player, a really good player, and
he's a little smaller.
Yeah, but you know, I'll tell you what, Butts just he murdered him. He played a great game.
Yeah, Jones, after an absolutely horrible start, at least
his first quarter. Oh.
At least he worked his way back into it. I'm not sold, but I don't think we've got any real options at the moment across there. And I'm not really going to say much about Laird and Keys, because as much as they got 73 touches between them, I thought they were pretty ineffective in terms of their impact on the game.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, but I think, in fairness, both of them are workhorses. They're not stars. They're workhorses. They do their bit, but we don't have that bit of silk around them that they can just give the ball to. They are what they are.
Yeah, they are. Ben Keys just looks like he's also tiring just a little bit, even though he's still getting a ton of the ball. He's not being able to break away from packs as much as perhaps a few weeks ago. And you're right, you get what we get from Laird and Keys, and I think that's why we've got to try and put runners around them. And at the moment, having Sloane in there with them is no good. I don't think Seaman's the answer going in there. I'd rather see Harry spend more time in there. Even Ned McHenry, at the moment, with our stocks the way they are, probably Ned McHenry a little bit more time in there. But we can't have the three of them in there at the same time. So look, to sum it up, I feel like, and I won't really bash on about the point. I don't think we were switched on to play, and when we finally switched on, we were too far behind the 8 ball to be effective in trying to turn the game around. And I don't think that the coaches actually did enough to instigate a game plan that would change the way the game was being played. They just let it bowl along, and we got found out.
Summed up very well there, Fane.
Nick?
Yep. No, I think you absolutely hit the nail on the head. I think there was some failures in the coaching box, which, to be fair, for the whole year, I think we've actually seen some really nice positive steps forward. But I think there was a little bit of a step back in some instances yesterday. And a main problem was that the same glaring problem that we had, that we knew from the last year, and it's still compounding this year, which is the midfield. But we're still seeing some nice improvements on some of the other younger players.
Agreed. That's about it. Has anyone else in the audience got anything they'd like to say before we wind up? Of course, I'd like to say a big thank you to everyone who has joined us on Discord and YouTube. We've got a great viewership on YouTube tonight. 42 people is fantastic. Lots of people in the Discord chat, lots of people in the live audience. Thanks to 1990 Crow for having a say. Of course, if you want to get around us on Patreon, go ahead and do so. I'm just listening. What am I doing here? I don't know what I'm doing. What am I doing? There we go. Yeah, if you'd like to get around us on Patreon, it's patreon.com/AFL Crowcast. And we would love to get any support that you'd like to throw our way. And we thank everyone, as their names are up on the screen there, we thank everyone for their patronage, I guess you'd call it. Also, if you're on Discord, don't forget to drop a suggestion in the suggestion box if you'd like to see something that perhaps we're not doing at the moment. Or if you'd like Macca to get less time doing his weekend bloody roundup, that'd be great as well.
Oh, thanks, eh?
Well, you get a fair run of it, mate. Poor old Nikki, she just sits in the background. Nikki, here we go. Nikki, just before we finish up, Nikki, would you like a segment? And if so, what segment would you like?
I used to have a segment.
The Cockwomble. We should bring the Cockwomble back.
I should bring the Cockwombling Numbnut of the Week award.
All right, done. From next week, we're bringing the Cockwomble of the Week award back, especially for Nikki.
You can do it when I'm not here. You can start it off without me.
We'll start it after the bye. We'll start it after the bye.
I missed the Womble song. That was my highlight. I used to sit there and dance.
I'm gonna have to find that. I don't know where it is. Anyway, look, that's enough from us. Thanks everyone for joining us. Thanks for all your support. We will see you on Tuesday night for Tuesday Night Live. Until then, take care and see you later.
Yeah, good night all.